From the very beginning, the purpose of this institution was to share our library, art, and gardens with the public. But it's the sharing with our colleagues and sharing with other institutions that enables us to keep growing. And the corpse flower is a perfect example. We've been growing corpse flowers for 20 years, but it was that first bloom that changed everything.
Our final story tonight is about an unearthly stench, now packing them in by the thousands in California. CBS's Bill Whitaker sniffed out this story.
It's the grandest Hollywood opening, well, ever. Thousands and thousands lining up on a stinking hot day at the Huntington Gardens near Pasadena to be among the privileged few to witness the Amorphophallus titanum in bloom.
There had been introduced to the U.S. A bunch of seed, and people who were really avid and active collectors had managed to get a few of the seed passed around. And Mark Dimmitt, who is a friend of ours who lives in Tucson, worked at the Arizona Sonoran Desert Museum. And Mark happened to get some of those seed. I was driving, my family and I were driving back from the East Coast. We drive across the country yearly, and we were driving back, so we stopped off to see Mark at Arizona Sonoran Desert Museum. And while we were there, he said, "Oh, by the way, I've got an Amorphophallus titanum that I've been growing in my little greenhouse." And his greenhouse wasn't so little, but it had a low ceiling. It was a Quonset hut. He said, "And it's getting so big I can't really grow it in the Quonset hut anymore. Would you like it?" And I said, "Absolutely, we would love one." And it's like having the Queen come and visit, you know, or some notable person who you'll never see again. And that's always been the standard between botanical gardens. Is unlike art galleries, you can't take Blue Boy and treat it right and have 5 more Blue Boys erupt, or it can't propagate itself. So in the plant world, the ethics are different. And among botanical gardens, the standard has always been that we share for many reasons. One is ours might die.
It's true, we can't clone the Blue Boy, but that makes the task of keeping it alive, intact, and on display a vital one. And this year, when our paintings conservator, Christina O'Connell, worked on the conservation of the Blue Boy, she shared her process with the public, doing a good portion of the work in gallery during public hours. And the Getty helped us by assembling some of the world's leading painting conservation experts to lend some advice to Christina. And one of the participants has experience with the painting that goes back years.
That's right. I was doing a research fellowship at the Getty for 3 months. And Mark Leonard, who was then the conservator there, but who also advised about paintings here, was coming to revarnish the Blue Boy, which meant taking it out of its frame. And he asked me and the director of the Huntington if I would like to take samples of the Gainsborough, because I, for over 30 years, have been looking at the materials and methods of Gainsborough's paintings, because I worked for 27 years at the Tate Gallery in London, which houses the British National Collection of historic paintings. And the director said yes, so I jumped at the chance to look closely at the Blue Boy, and I took some samples from the edges of the painting and took them back to the Tate to analyse them, and wrote up the report and sent it back to the Huntington. So that was in 2009, going into 2010. And then since then I've done a lot more research on Gainsborough, and when Christina O'Connell wrote to me saying that she was going to be working on the Blue Boy, I said, well, come to the Tate and I'll take you through all the samples I've got and all the information I've got, and you can take the Blue Boy samples back to California because there's still plenty of work to be done on them. And that's what we did.
So the pollen-like fragments that Rika Jones was able to obtain 10 years ago have helped inform the conservation of the work today. And yes, unlike in the gallery, over in the greenhouse, they can grow more specimens of the corpse flower. but the time frame for survival can be much shorter and more urgent for this rare and specialized plant. And we've had many blooms since that first one in the summer of 1999, including one this year. But this year, when it was ready to be pollinated, we did not have the pollen that we needed.
We actually contacted our sister botanic garden from the CSU, California State University, Fullerton. They have an arboretum there in which they have a massive collection of court flowers as well. We called up our friend Ed Reed, and he said, yes, we have pollen, but we had one problem that we couldn't quite figure out. We had a small window. We didn't have enough staff to actually send somebody out there to collect the pollen and to bring it back from their college. So what we did was, this was the idea of Dylan Hannon, who's the curator of the Conservatory and Tropical Collection. He suggested that we call an Uber. So I pulled out my phone, we got the app out, and we just plotted a point on the college in which the professor there, Ed Reed, would made a transfer of the pollen into the Uber. So he just threw the pollen in the Uber. We mentioned to the driver ahead of time that we would be putting pollen there and no passengers at all. So it was very fascinating that we saw the pollen migrate over through traffic, through LA traffic from Orange County to San Marino.
The corpse flower and the blue boy are perhaps two of the things that the Huntington is known best for. But the reason we are able to share these with the public is because of our connections with Mark at the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum, or with Rika at the Tate, or Ed at Cal State Fullerton. That's how sharing pollinates knowledge and spreads learning. And we've been growing that way for 100 years.